All right, so this is lecture 7 about information structure or functional sentence perspective, and of course its teaching aspects. All I'm going to do is introduce the topic of functional sentence perspective or communicative dynamism, as it's also known, and then most of the lecture will in fact be Dr. Pickering explaining the SLA aspects of it. So basically these are some questions, some general topics that can be examined that Dr. Pickering will develop in more detail. But the basic idea is, every language has a way of presenting information. Okay, I mean, obviously, information just doesn't come naturally organized a certain way. The way we present it, the way we choose to report things is going to matter, right? And so, the question is there, is it the same? And I can give you the answer, it's not. Okay, so then it becomes a matter, it becomes a relevant matter. Why is it not the same, and how does that affect the way people understand each other or misunderstand each other when they communicate across languages that may have different ways of organizing the information? If the information were organized the same in every language, then it wouldn't be a problem, right, across languages, because the information would just come a certain way. So the fact that it doesn't come always the same way means that there can be a problem, and therefore you must be aware of it. And then how about context? What role does context play into this? And then, of course, the big question, so then how do we teach it? Okay, that's the real big question. So I've used the terms functional sentence perspective or communicative dynamism to describe this organization of the information. So what is it? Okay, and here you have a definition that is a reasonable definition that I think most people would agree on. Essentially that there is an influence on the organization of the degree in which the speaker and the hearer agree that the information being presented is already known or already part of the background knowledge, or it's completely new, unknown, novel, not part of the background knowledge. Okay, so that would be your basic idea. Okay, where does this idea come from? It comes from a group of scholars that were based around Prague, and so Mathesius, Firbash, and Danesh, these are the big names. And then, there's a number of other people that have done it. Halliday is really the big name there because he brought it over to the London School and then to Australia, and sort of functionalism largely is influenced so the Prague School influence comes through Halliday. So one thing that, again, I think everybody would agree on is that this field is a terminological nightmare. Okay, there is all sorts of terminology. So in my long-standing tradition of being nice to the students, I've introduced this chart which basically gives you sort of all the terminology that you are likely to come across, and you probably might come across some more because pretty much every scholar tends to come up with their own term. But basically you have the theme, which is the known information, and the reme, which is the new unknown information. And again, people have used topic and comment, all the new, common, non-common, shared, not shared, foundation, core. I mean, there's like really a whole slew of terminology. I myself tend to use theme and reme, but as I said, there is no agreement on the terminology, but there is a general agreement on the concept. So let's look at a very simple, very straightforward example that should help understand what we're talking about here. So let's look at the sentence, Mary bought the book. Okay? Here you have Mary, which is assumed known. Okay? So in other words, we all know who Mary is. Mary is a person that we can easily identify. There is an easily identifiable Mary in the universe of people that we know. Okay? If you have to say, what Mary are you talking about, then the sentence is no good. Okay? The person that said Mary bought the book didn't do a good job of presenting the sentence. Okay? But otherwise, Mary bought the book assumes that there is a salient Mary that we can identify just by saying Mary. Then you have bought, which is an intermediate phase between theme and rime, between the old information and the really new information. It's slightly newer, but not newest. Okay? So basically it's an intermediate state. So you know Mary, and the fact that she bought something may or may not be entirely new to you. You knew that maybe she did something, but maybe not that she bought something. Or maybe you knew that she had bought something, so that maybe purchasing is a fairly normal event, right? But then you get the book, and now that's the new information. You might have known that Mary had bought something, but you didn't know that what she bought was a book, okay? And so the purpose of this sentence is to tell you that you know Mary, you might have known about the purchasing, what she bought is in fact a book. Okay, and so that's the idea of functional sentence perspective, is that you have organized the sentence with the old information first and the new information last. Okay. Now, this structuring of information can be done in many ways. Okay, so it's not just the order of words that conveys the novelty or the non-novelty of the information. It can be done in many ways. So it can be done through syntax or morphology in this particular case. So where you have Mary bought a book, and now it's a completely unknown book because we don't even know what book it is. Or Mary bought the book, where we know that there is a specific book, right? That's the difference between the determinative and the indeterminative article, right? A is indeterminative, the is determinative. Determinative means it's a specific book, it's a determined book that Mary bought. Then you have marked constructions, right? So you could have a sentence like John saw Mary at the party. That's your standard organization in which you put John first because you know that it's John that did the action. And then, in the end, it's at the party. That's the new bit of information, right? But you can also emphasize, you say, it was Mary that John saw at the party. Now, the new information, the salient information, the important information is Mary, not the party. Okay? So this would be if somebody said, John saw Anne at the party, right? And you said, no, it was Mary that John saw at the party, right? So Mary's presence is the new thing. Now, if you thought that Mary was going to stay home and study, and John saw her at the party, then you would say John saw Mary at the party, right? So now at the party is the normal thing. So these marked constructions, their purpose in syntax is precisely to allow you to move around parts of the sentence so that you can emphasize new or old information as you see fit, right? So, for example, mushrooms, I like, right? Normally you would say, I like mushrooms. But here you want to emphasize even more than just by putting it at the end of the sentence that it's mushrooms that you like, okay? So, that's one way that syntax can help you, emphasize or stress semantically stress some parts of the sentence. And then, of course, you have, the passive, where the whole purpose of the construction is precisely to move around the emphasis between the agent and the patient of the sentence. So if you say mistakes were made, and to the point, I should add, that in the passive you can remove the agent entirely. Good example, mistakes were made. Okay? So here you're saying somebody made mistakes, but I'm not telling you who made the mistakes, right? So I might say mistakes were made because I don't want to say I made a mistake, right? People don't like to usually admit that they've made a mistake, so you might say, well, mistakes were made. Okay? Now, besides this this example, usually the passive is used in scientific writing because the agent is really not important. When you say, I performed an experiment. Well, no, actually it wasn't really me. It was my graduate students that I paid to do the experiment, right? But you don't want to say that in an article. So you say, the experiment was performed, right? And you don't have to say who actually did the counting of the beans, for example, right? So you would say the beans were counted and the number was 126, right? So you don't have to say the beans were counted by graduate students that I paid for that purpose. Okay. Cars must be driven slowly up the ramp. Again, it's like must be driven by the drivers, right? So but there's no point in saying that. Obviously, who's going to drive the car? Well, nowadays with self-driving cars, it might actually be a different story. But assuming regular cars driven by people, then obviously it's the driver that's going to do the driving. So there is no point to say the drivers must drive their cars slowly up the ramp. So you said cars must be driven. Okay. All right. So this is where I will end.